Hello everyone. In this tutorial, made with the 2019 version of Substance Painter, we will see how to use a generator to modify the edges of an object. More precisely, we will talk about the metal edge wear generator and the invert and blur filters. I talked about the generators in Substance Painter in a previous tutorial, the one in which I used the dripping rust generator on the 3D model of a cigar. In that tutorial I said what generators are and why it is necessary to make a bake of geometries, which we will also do in this tutorial. So I suggest you take a look at that tutorial before studying this one. Okay, let's take a look at the project. We have the 3D model of a stylized bridge. I say stylized because the geometries are not particularly complex. You can find a link to this asset in the description of the video. We want to apply a wood type material, but we also want to introduce differences between the edges and the inner parts of the various wooden boards, for example by desaturating the inner parts and accentuating the bumps and distortions of the wood in the edges. First of all, I provide a basic wood material to the object. For this example, I am choosing Paldau wood. The height values, in this case, are too high, so I'm lowering them, bringing the height range value down, in the Properties Fill Parameters tab, for example to 0.08. Moreover, I am increasing the repetitions of the material on the object, which has a good UV layout, so there is no need to fix the mapping, bringing the scale value down to 3. I slightly desaturate the color of the wood. In this way, in the Properties Fill Parameters tab, I click on Wood Color and lower the value of the S parameter, which stands for saturation, bringing it from 0.62, default value, to 0.35. This material is fine for the inner parts of the wood planks. Let's rename it inner to avoid confusion. Let's duplicate this material and place the copy on top of the original and renaming it to outer in the Layers tab. We immediately notice that the duplication of the material has accentuated the height bumps on the whole surface of the object. We will talk about this later. To limit the outer effect to just the edges of the object we need a mask. So, let's add a black mask to that material, effectively turning it off. To create the mask for the edges, we right-click on the mask, attention, on the mask, not on the material, and choose Add Generator. As for the generator, we choose Metal Edge Wear. The result is disappointing. From the tutorial on the dripping rust generator, we also know why. Let's click on Bake Mesh Maps then, in the Texture Set Settings tab, creating a basic bake of the maps needed by the generator. Warning: outer has the same color as inner, so let's modify it by bringing the saturation value of outer back to 0.62. Moreover, we increase the height range value to accentuate the bumps. Here I am exaggerating, bringing it to 0.15. At the end of these operations, the new result will be very different from the previous one, and we will be able to appreciate it more by deactivating the visualization of the inner material. Not bad as a starting point, but there are at least 2 improvements that we can make. For example, we can fade or blur the mask a little, so as to increase the contrast between inner and outer. Moreover, we can completely exclude inner, which is currently applied to the entire surface of the object, from the edges. Let's start by blurring the edges of the mask of outer. In this way, let's select the metal edge wear generator of the mask, right-click and choose Add Filter. A filter is, in general, a tool that modifies the information with which it is associated. In this case, the information is the mask produced by the underlying element, i.e. by the metal edge wear generator. The filter is currently empty. In Properties Filter we therefore choose the effect that is right for us, that is, blur. The effect will be immediately visible on the screen, in the preview of the material. We can vary the intensity by acting on the blur intensity parameter in Properties Filter. The other change we want to achieve concerns the exclusion of the inner material from the edges, because the edges will be handled by outer. What we want to achieve is an inner mask, which is basically an inverted version of the mask used for outer. Yes, you're right. We need a filter to invert the map, and guess what? Substance has an invert filter. First of all, let's use in outer the same mask used in inner. In this way, right-click on the outer mask and choose Copy Mask, then right-click on the inner mask, which doesn't have a mask yet, and choose Add Black Mask, thus creating a black, empty mask. To copy the outer mask with the filter and the generator, we right-click on the inner black mask and choose Paste into Mask. To better see what happens, we temporarily disable the visualization of the outer material in the Layers tab. Okay, maybe by right-clicking you will have noticed an invert mask. Well, it gets an effect similar to what I want to achieve with filters, but it uses another tool, the levels. I will talk about them another time. In this tutorial, let's talk about generators and filters only. Let's right-click on Metal Edge Wear Generator in the inner material and choose Add Filter. The new, empty filter will be placed exactly between the generator and the blur filter. In the Properties Filter tab, we choose Invert. In this way, the generator will create a mask for the edges, as for outer, after which it will invert it and finally apply blur. Among other things, we can act at will on the value of blur intensity, which is independent of that of the outer filter, which at this point we can also enable again, by the way. In summary, in this tutorial we saw how to use the Metal Edge Wear Generator to quickly isolate the edges of an object. Then we saw how to simulate a bit of material wear, in this case, changing the color saturation and increasing the intensity of the reliefs with height, using two slightly different versions of the same material. Finally, we have provided blur and invert filters to the masks created using the generators in order to modify them. So that's all for this tutorial. As usual, I invite you to express doubts, questions or requests for clarification in the comments to the video, on YouTube.